Well, today it's my really special pleasure and honor to have Lukasz Gadowski on the Making It Real podcast. Lukasz is one of the core people that I know that really built up the Berlin ecosystem and really took it international and helped many then other companies scale internationally and making them big. Among them, initially he co-founded Spreadshirt. He is co-founded Team Europe. He was as well much involved in StudiVerzeichnis, growing that one of the main social networks, having a massive market share in the DACH region, Brands for Friends, Mister Spex, iPotential, Hitfox, Gruenderszene, Delivery Hero, the list goes on and on. Lukasz, I'm so happy to have you on the show tonight, and actually, thanks for joining us. Will you tell us a bit about how you got started?
Yes,
into the entrepreneurship, like what was what was your way to get it all going? How did you start?
Yeah. How did I start? First of all, Jan, thank you for having me. It's my big pleasure and my big honor, and looking forward and happy. How did I start? So my path is like technology, the love for technology and the future. I always say the future is the future. And that's it. So progress. So the mission is like progress for the world, and it's technological progress. And this is how I started out. And I wanted to, as a teenager, I wanted to contribute to scientific progress of mankind. And then there've been like various venues how to do so. You could become a scientist. You could become a politician. I thought. I checked this out for half a year to become a politician, and realized it was not for me. And then this was like this inventor entrepreneur. This was sort of like my my inspiration and my goal. And then I started. I picked my field of studies accordingly. I married business with technology. The idea was like business is the craftsmanship to build a company, to build an organization, and technology is the piece of inspiration, of progress, of basically that enables to invent something, so to say. That was my idea. And the first company indeed was not Spreadshirt. The first successful company was Spreadshirt. There've been a couple of companies. There were a couple of companies before that were not successful. Very fast failures.
How old were you then, by the way, roundabout?
This was, and again, like I picked my field of studies already with the goal to become an entrepreneur, right? So in the first, I think like in the second semester of my studies, I co-founded the first company. It was a consulting company. It was not successful. Then in the fourth semester, I think I started the second one. This was supposed to be like a price comparison engine for mobile phones. Also wasn't successful. And I also did like student consulting projects on the side. Some of them have been successful, some of them not. And then I had a lot of learnings under the belt. And so when my third years of studies started, I founded Spreadshirt, first alone, because this was one of the lessons learned from my earlier startups, that you don't necessarily start with, at least for me, this was not successful to start with my friends, to start with fellow students. And so again, like the first to fail, starting with fellow students, more or less. Those are not complementary founder teams. You're all more or less like the same, and I learned this the hard way. And when I started Spreadshirt, I first did it myself, and then found my partner. Matthias is his name, like a great entrepreneur himself, and he was very complimentary to me. And he was a very talented engineer, and I studied engineering, but I wasn't great at engineering. I was good at organizing stuff and good at leadership, I guess. But he was a great engineer. He was 10 years older than myself. He's seen real companies from the inside, had real work experience, all of that, and also like from traits, from the character, we are complementary.
In what sense? How would you describe yourself versus him, the Matthias?
I was like a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more optimistic, and a little bit more creative. And he was a little bit like more analytical, more thorough in a sense, And I always wanted to work around. Let's ship this feature fast. You know, we cannot do this, and let's do a workaround. Yeah, and then the balance of the two approaches proved to be really great. And the decisions that we then took, I think, with Spreadshirt, we executed flawlessly. Yeah, so this is the first a first lesson learned, and one of the first lessons learned is to how to pick your partners or your co-founders, to have them be very complementary.
And you said you started initially alone and then you found him. How did you find him?
So he was one of the first customers for Spreadshirt. He was running a website back then called .com.tot. It was a funny website about like in this whole internet bubble theme where startups have been hyped a lot and then they started to disappear. There was a website, like a community discussing like those disappearances and the failures. And he was a customer, like selling t-shirts on this website. Yeah. And the first version, since I wasn't a great engineer, the first version of the website was super simple. It was really an MVP, minimum viable product. Yeah. There wasn't even bars, and this was like 2001. So like the infrastructure was completely different than what we have today online. So you could order one t-shirt. If you want to order 2 t-shirts, you have to place 2 orders. There was one payment method, and this was like or no, 2 payment methods. Either you pay me in advance and then I ship, yeah? Or you give me in Germany, you give me your bank account details, and then I will how it's called, Einzugsermächtigung in German, nice word.
Like the amount is drawn from that bank account, no? And
then I can draw from your bank account, yeah. But your bank details I would submit in the URL in the address line, right? So it's the most insecure way of transmitting your bank data, basically.
And you programmed that, or somebody else programmed that?
This was like a commission work by a web designer from Berlin. And with also like a little bit of a collaboration, but like it was really super simple. Yeah, and then Matthias is the first customer. He basically complained. He was like, "Hey, this is insecure. You cannot do this. I want the basket. I want this. I want that." And I was like, "Yeah, I know, but and I would like to have it too, but I have no resources, etc. But I'm looking for someone." And this is how we started to talk, and ended up being partners in Spreadshirt. Yeah. And today it's, by the way, a great company. Like we have more than 1,000 employees. It's also interesting because I sold a little bit, a small stake to investors, but I never exited it. And so Matthias and I are still majority shareholders of it. We're still board members. The company is now it's going to be 20 years old soon. Yeah. So, and it's a great company, and it's like 1,000 employees. It's a profitable business, and now we're making it ready to become a public company, yeah? And it's still growing. So also one of the learnings is don't sell companies, yeah, and that's yeah, don't sell companies.
A fascinating journey as well. How did you come up with the idea then for Spreadshirt early on? This first idea where you said, okay, let's do that. Let's sell t-shirts online, like printed t-shirts.
So I call it, yeah, you get ideas if you expose yourself to the real world. So basically it came out of my consulting, being a student consulting and just being active. Yeah. And one of my clients was a t-shirt textile printer. And there's where I seen like the domain. So then I married like computer science, computer engineering, the internet with the problems of a textile printer. Single pieces, fast turnaround, high quality. So like high quality prints, single pieces on demand, and very efficient back end, yeah? Because of the textile printers, they would hate a one-off order. They would not like to do this. They like to sell you 100 t-shirts, 200 t-shirts, 1,000 t-shirts. One t-shirt they don't like. How can they price it? Yeah, for them it's a lot of overhead. So we streamlined the processes. But the idea came out of being exposed to real world problems. Yeah. And this is also maybe one pattern that's very important that guides me as an entrepreneur. It's like to create lasting value, to really create value, and this is the driving force. And at the beginning, I said my goal was like to contribute to scientific progress of mankind. It's a very noble goal, right? I want to create value, and I believe that this is the least risky path to success, is to create a genuine long-term value. And because if you have so many risks as an entrepreneur, and so basically doing the right thing helps, and it de-risks and gives you a lot of tailwind, a lot of support. I call it from the universe. Yeah, the universe is then
the karma almost. We had the karma,
the universe. Yeah, and I think like the most admired entrepreneur today is probably Elon Musk, or one of the most admired, and I think this proves the point. Yeah, he was doing the right thing, and then in the right moments he had the tailwind of the universe. Yeah? And again, if there's so much risk, maybe something is a short-term fad, etc. But if you're doing the right thing and solve real problems for society, yeah, at the beginning with a business model, later on, once you're a successful businessman, you can do philanthropy. You should probably do always a little bit of philanthropy on the side already, just to get, just to keep the muscle growing. But like later on, you can do it without a business model at the beginning of your careers, unless you're very wealthy and you inherited all the wealth from I don't know, your families. Or somebody, right? Typically it should be your family. I don't know where else you should inherit it. But yeah, you start with something that has a business model and that solves a real world problem. And this is today also what keeps guiding me as an entrepreneur. Yeah. So today with Team Europe, we're trying to solve big problems. Yeah? And
which big problems are you currently focusing on a lot?
So there are 3 or 4. Yeah, it gets complex since this is such a complex group. But like one of them is I call personal aviation as a service. Some people call it the urban air mobility or air taxis. Basically, flying instead of driving with a car. And this creates a nice dynamic. For example, you no longer need roads. So you don't need to destroy nature and pave roads. You have like sort of like more freedom, more flexibility, etc. The reason why we have cars and not personal aviation devices, let's call them, and they're not really airplanes, is just because of we lack the technology. Now the technology is there. And for me, you mentioned like at the beginning all the businesses that I've been involved with, and the biggest success was Delivery Hero. Delivery Hero today is like a 30 billion company, not $30 billion, right? So I think today it's 28 billion.
Might be growing, as well.
Yeah, those are changes. It's a public company, changes.
Yes.
The government's just printed a lot of money, right? So like everything is a little bit, everything got a bump. So why I'm telling that is because I'm looking for the next order of magnitude. This is also one lesson learned. As an entrepreneur, I always try to for something to be interesting, it's the next level, and the next level is 10x. Yeah, and so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for opportunities that can be like 100 billion or beyond as a milestone. Also, again, like as I said, like there's no exit. Those should be like independent companies per se. And in this personal aviation field, I see that this is that this has this potential. So. At Team Europe, we have a portfolio of technologies around that.
And if we go deep on that one, you're chairman of Volocopter, for example. Aviation.
Yeah, maybe before we go deep, like I arrived there because I thought like after Delivery here, I wanted to go back to like more deep tech and like what is the pattern and what is my role in this ecosystem. And the pattern is that, like, as Europeans, we didn't do a great job in building very large companies, starting with the computer era. Yeah? The only large company from the computer era that I'm aware of is SAP. Maybe there's also ARM, the chip maker. But it's no longer public, so I don't know. I don't have the insights. Then from the internet era, there's barely anything. Yeah, so there's Spotify there's but it's below 100 billion, right? And Delivery Hero is below 100 billion. And if you look to Asia, if you look to United States, they have companies that they're worth a few hundred billion, they're worth trillions, right? So like we missed that. And the ingredients to build such companies, there are like a few ingredients. One of them is, again, technology, resources, talent, educated people who listen to this podcast, or etc., engineers. And then the other ingredient is also like capital markets, entrepreneurship, the business skills, the business culture. You know? And I think here, this is where I can provide value, for society, because if I'm interested in technology, I have respect for technology, but relatively speaking, I'm experienced in business culture and I'm experienced in capital markets. And so this was the idea, zoom out, okay, let's build like companies, European companies that can take global, utilizing the resources that we have, the great talent, the great culture, the culture of being inclusive, liberal, all that makes Europe great, and the role model and interesting, so to say. And yeah, and Volocopter was the first investment in this batch. But like derived from there, I found more real world problems that need a solution. And in the end, they coincide with what the big problems are today for the globe, for society. And one of the big problems that has our attention, obviously, is the greenhouse gas emissions and global warming. Yeah, and it happens that like all these flying cars, they're too heavy because the batteries are heavy. Yeah, for a car, it's not so much a problem to have a too heavy battery. For a personal aviation vehicle, it is. You know? Most of the cars, by the way, they drive very short distances. So this range anxiety, yeah, how often a week you go a few hundred kilometers with your car? No, you don't. Usually you commute. And this is, by the way, we also did one of the scooter companies. And have Circ have a portfolio of scooters companies now. So we're investors mainly in Bird, but also like small investors in Voi. Also have Miles Mobility. That's a car sharing company, also a great company in our portfolio. And others to come. So, but this was now digressing, yeah. So the batteries are too heavy for those personal vehicles, so we need different solutions. It's either combustion again, yes, then you have the greenhouse gases, or it's going to be hydrogen. Yeah. So derived from these problems, we found another untapped, very large market that can sustain like 100 billion plus company, and 100 billion always the milestone. Remember, it's not the end goal; it's just the milestone, just the goal post, and then we keep going after that. And this is what I call clean commercial aviation. And basically, how to make commercial aviation clean, like all this, like I don't know, this regional jets, like when you zigzag through Europe or you go transatlantic, etc. And here, hydrogen probably is one solution. Yeah, and this like dabbling like with this whole energy field brought us like to its third field, and this is what I call clean abundant energy. And clean abundant energy starts with renewables. So here we have with Enpal, it's a great company in Germany. We have solar in our portfolio. It's a consumer player for solar. We make it very easy for homeowners to get their own solar. It's a company growing very fast. But then also beyond that, discovered the field of nuclear energy. So we have a portfolio of nuclear energy investments now. One of them in fission, so like splitting the atom, and one of them in fusion, so fusing atoms. And maybe I start with the fusion one. And this again, like all the lenses, like to create this lasting value and solve real world big problems, so to say, and really contribute to a change. So this fusion thing is amazing. I mean, like we're talking about the dawn of the fusion age, right? This is like the James Watt, the steam engine, and
totally, yeah.
But and the computer age, and now we're talking fusion, yeah. And people work on this like since many years, and this is a fascinating story because the work on it for many years, but like the approaches are too hard. It's sort of like not realistic. Those are like very, I don't know, like it's always 30 years away. Yeah, those are like this big magnetic confinement and machines. There's one they built in south of France by an international consortium. I don't know. They already invested 10 billion or more, and they want to invest another 20 billion, and then it's net energy gain. And this is just a demonstrator. It's still not the real thing, and they expect it in 20 years. What Professor Heinz Hohra, and this is the name of the founder, came up with, and he's a theoretical physicist. He did this like all his life. He's 89 years old. Yeah, so this is like the oldest founder, the oldest partner, and we started with. But he came up with the laser boron fusion. Yeah, so you don't fuse hydrogen, you fuse a proton with boron, and you use lasers, not the big magnetic fields, etc. So it's a much simpler approach. Yeah, and the science is already proven. So it's, I mean, there's still technological risk that is significant. Yeah, we believe we have a 50% chance, but hey, 50% chance for the dawn of the fusion age is pretty good odds.
But seems then really quite some development, no, from this really quick to market where you can have revenues really quickly. Now you're in spaces where it does really take quite some tech development first, some fundamental, even almost research. How much time to market do you typically expect now in these till you can actually sell the first products?
Yeah, it's a complex, complex world. Interesting. Maybe I answered it with going to the second one, the splitting the atom, fission. Yeah. So there is like I observed two patterns. There are about like 100, 150 personal aviation device companies right now. Yeah, urban air mobility. 100, 150, maybe 200. Like depends how you count. Maybe like 20 of them are well funded and somewhat would you consider serious, and they will bring the product to market. Yeah? So we have about 20 companies in this batch. And I see the same pattern in next generation nuclear, yeah? Splitting the atom in a safe way, splitting the atom with little waste, with a much less long-lived waste and much less toxic waste. Yeah? And here I see the same pattern. There are about 100 companies right now building the nuclear reactors of the next generation. So it's not like just like one company, it's not 2, it's not 5, it's not 10, it's like 100. And maybe again, like 15, 20 of them are somewhat serious. And here we picked one that has they start to talk to customers now. They didn't build a reactor yet. They didn't certify a full reactor yet. They went to the first phase, but they wanted to have customers early. And the roadmap says 5 years time to market to have the first reactor shipped. And in that sense, shipped is quite literally because of the company's name. It's Seaborg.co. They build those reactors on energy barges on ships. Yeah. So and that solves a few problems. It solves regulatory problems, but it also solves then scaling problems and how to distribute it, etc. Imagine from a regulatory perspective, you want to build a nuclear power plant, you have to apply for the land, find land, this and that. And here you just put it on the ship and bring it wherever you need. And you're also like sort of flexible. And again, when we think nuclear, we think like, oh, dangerous waste, etc. That's also fascinating to see how our perception and how facts are sometimes like playing wrong. And like when you look at the details of an industry, how perverted sometimes is. So in that case, for example, the existing nuclear designs, they make a lot of money with the nuclear waste, yeah, because of the storage of it is very expensive. When the storage of something is very expensive, it means someone's making a lot of money. Yeah, so the existing nuclear designs, they don't even have an incentive to come up with this less long-lived things. Yeah, so they even prevented innovation in nuclear reactor designs now for years and years and years. And so this perception that nuclear is dangerous and there's always a lot of waste is wrong. And we see now more and more people and groups getting it. And even little, she's no longer little because she turned 18 now. Greta is an advocate of next generation nuclear. So that tells us something. Yeah. So, but back to your question, yeah, 5 years, and it's a long time to market. The interesting thing is that there are always nice milestones on the way. So it's not like that, oh, you have to wait for 5 years and in between there's nothing. Yeah? In between you get, I don't know, like the ABS approval, American Bureau of Shipping approved Seaborg's reactor. In between you get Hyundai signed a letter of understanding to build the ships, etc. Yeah? So you have all these milestones, the goalposts that are clearly progress. ultimately, whether you're successful or not, is you need to ship a product, or in that case, a reactor, or a flying car, or like a personal aviation device. But even here, if you want to have like personal aviation devices about our cities, the first revenue that we're going to see and the first applications is not even for transport. The first applications are going to be for experiential entertainment. Basically, you take a joyride. Basically, you take a spin. There's one company in our portfolio in the United States called Lift Aircraft. They're working on it. And there's one other in Marseille in southern France called Zapata Racing. They're doing the same. So, I mean, not the same in the sense of the vehicles are the same. They're very different, but they target the same market, experiential entertainment. And yeah, there's a lot of revenue with that, and not enough to build like this 100 billion, but enough to make revenue and finance your R&D. So you not only depend on investors, but you learn where you have real customers money. And you can imagine wherever you are, imagine like a quiet device. Yeah, it has like a few rotors. It's like a man carrying drone. It's safe. You sit in it. And how much would you pay for take a spin for 10 minutes? You can fly a few hundred meters high. 10 minutes you can fly around. It's somehow geofenced. Yeah, it has like all the emergency measures, etc. A lot of people are going to do this. And you're not only going to do it once, you're going to do it, some of us are going to do it multiple times. Yeah, because if it's different, fly about Barcelona, for example, it's just beautiful to see the city from above, right? But if you're in Spain, as I am now, for example, it's a different beauty. So that's why experiential entertainment is.
Are you just focusing on those three areas, these like different areas, or as well the classical, let's say, internet?
No, that would be too much, right? That would be totally boring and it's like too little. No, just joking. I also have what I, yeah. So my heritage is with Spreadshirt. I'm still board member of Spreadshirt, so I'm still active there. And Miles Mobility is the company we have with delivery here. I'm still shareholder there, and I recently also invested in Volt, which is like a food delivery company in the Nordics, Israel, Japan, and now also Germany. So there's a little bit of this just heritage. Yeah. We just invested in Mirai Foods. It's an artificial meat, non-GMO, lab grown, non-GMO meat. Because of all the others are like are GMO, so we have non-GMO. Mirai Foods, great company. So there's still a portfolio of these, and in my experience, it's sort of like an ecosystem almost, yeah. And the conventional wisdom is focus, and at some point, just the focus. It was like with Delivery Hero, we built an ecosystem around it, and all of the companies that you mentioned before, in the end, they coalesced in creating this giant, right? And yeah, so that's the pattern that we're playing here at Team Europe to have an ecosystem of companies. Yeah?
What's the first, if people feel, hey, I see this big value that I can create in an area that can be just gigantic because it addresses one of the biggest mankind problems. Do you then have like a game plan also to make them that big? Like if we take delivery,
that's maybe an interesting question or an interesting point, because of, I mean, like for me, I have now to go after the biggest problems, right? Because if I want to go to the next level, and I already was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be successful. So A, I can afford it. B, for me to be meaningful, I have to do it. But you start with small problems. You don't start with solving all the world problems. You start with being successful, and then you go from success to success. I mean, my first company was printing T-shirts. It's a great product, and I'm proud of it, and it's a very peaceful and cool and creative product, but it's not solving the world's problems, right? Now we may be going to, because of like we're also going to innovate the industry in terms of sustainability, etc. So we contribute, yeah, but it's not the big thing. T-shirts, yeah. Another, yeah, but it gets me into the game. Another example was, you mentioned Gruenderszene, which is like Germany's magazine about entrepreneurship. It started as my personal blog. And it didn't start because of I said like, oh, now I want to blog because of I want whatever, feel important or this or that. I did it because back then in 2001, after the internet bubble burst, and Gruenderszene, I think was 2004, 2005, I started it. There was no entrepreneurial ecosystem. And in Germany, you're German, so you know it. German business was based on creating distance and hierarchy. Yeah, it was like the you versus the sie. There's a form for you. Yeah, and so in English we just have you, but in German you have du. This is informal, or we have sie. This is like formal, creates distance, indicates hierarchy, and all of that. And there was not a lot of transparency. And this is how Gruenderszene started. I wanted to solve the problem of bringing the people together and foster this entrepreneurial ecosystem. This was my motivation. And when you start with this motivation to solve a real problem, then again, the universe takes care of the rest, because it really filled the void. And it was quite beautiful. We did like this video interviews, like spinning around and saying like, wer bist du? Was machst du? Who are you? What do you do? And this informal you. And then on a video, the format of video allowed us to show a person. And now, for example, you see myself also in a video. So you see, it's richer than text, right? You see my character, you see my movements, and you get a sense, oh, do I click with this guy or do I don't, right? Some people click with each other, others don't. And this was the idea behind Gruenderszene. But the point is like, start small, create some value, solve some problem. Obviously, you want it to be somewhat scalable, right? Like a magazine would be a good example of being scalable, a t-shirt platform also. But don't start with trying to solve all the world's problems from the outset. But maybe also do. I mean, like, this is even better if you can.
Depends a bit. No, yeah.
I do not want to discourage you. I just say like, every path is different, right?
It might be definitely okay to start with a project that has a more immediate maybe way to market, to build it up, to learn in the process, and then start a much bigger route, arguably, or so. No, could be different things, or one that says, hey, I'm an engineer, I have this nuclear physicist, I'm one of the best, I have a unique approach that we can fund it, let's do it. No, various ways. In terms of then, if we briefly outline, and as well, it depends a bit then on the type of venture. And so what would you say are, if we take the core mistakes that people are doing, what would you say these things I see over and over, and that's just not a way to do it?
Premature scaling. We just talked about it today with another entrepreneur. Premature scaling. People often hire too fast. At some point, they get the big check, and then now we have to grow. Now we have to hire people, and then they end up hiring too fast. Yeah. And then you keep, as an entrepreneur, you keep yourself busy with hiring the people. Then you need to select them. And often the problem is not enough time, put time into selecting those. So there's the who method. So we at Team Europe follow the who method. It's like top grading, top scoring, etc. There's this great book. It's called Who, the E Method for Hiring. I think the name, I just look it up here. Geoff Smart wrote it. So we're using this. So A, invest a lot of time like how to select your people. B, don't hire like too many too fast, because of this distracts you from your real job. Your real job is usually building a product, getting customers, getting finance, all this stuff, and then you end up entertaining, bespaßen, we said in Germany, I remember, entertaining those new hires that you have. Yeah? And then at some point you realize, oh man, I hired too much, I hired too fast, my burden is too fast, too high, I cannot finance it. And since I was distracting myself so much with those people topics, it's even worse, because of then I'm lagging behind in my other priorities. And now you have to let them go again, which is like painful. And so this we see over and over again. This premature hiring. So you want to grow your organization gradually. I just said like, there's a great company. It's called X-Shore, like the X and the shore. They do electric boats in Sweden. So Europe is invested there, and we talked with the entrepreneur, and he's experienced. He's an experienced manager, and they're in hypergrowth now. And his his criteria was like, he said like, well, I think we can double every year without compromising on quality. And this is what will determine our pace. He didn't say like, oh, we need to grow 4 times, and double is already a lot. You could do this for a few years. And again, this person, Oscar is his name, is seasoned. So he knows sort of like what he's talking about. If you're a younger entrepreneur, I would probably even discourage you from double. Double might be okay from going from 2 to 4 to 8, maybe to 16, but beyond 16, you probably don't want to double, or at least be very careful. So this is a common mistake.
What is a clear indication for you that you say now is actually a time to scale? Then what would be like a few check marks there to check for?
Scale, yes, but like the question is like how fast? Like premature scaling, I don't know. Like it's a good question. It's a good question.
So classical like product market fit, we're checking out, like customer retention metrics and.
No, it's more about like the organization, right? How comfortable are you with the organization? How well you know the people? How much do you feel in control? How little surprises they are? Yeah. How fast can you also grow as an entrepreneur, etc. And every situation is dramatically different. Yeah? Sometimes you strike gold. It depends on the business models. I mean, there are really so many factors. It's unbelievable. The world is a very complex place. Yeah, it's different in the US than it's in Europe. It's different in Asia, etc. Yeah, it's different whether you're in a hot space where there's a lot of capital versus it's not hot. Sometimes it's good to be anti-cyclical. Sometimes it's good to lead or ride a wave. Sometimes it's good to be a pioneer. Sometimes you want to be a follower. So there is no one size fits its all answer. Yeah, but maybe one advice that is good: when you have the money, don't necessarily spend it. People sometimes think like, oh, I have to justify it from investors that I need to spend this money. No, investors are happy if you take money and don't spend it. Investors are happy. At least they should be. The good investors are. There are also bad investors who like you to see the money gone because of then they can invest more. This is not a healthy thing that helps to build our ecosystem, by the way, but they exist. And this also one thing that my experience is like who is your investor is very important. And not every dollar is equal. It's very important who the dollar comes from, and that the people who provide the dollar have experience and a growth mindset, and because of it can make such a dramatic difference. And I've seen companies literally destroyed by investors multiple times, many times over. When we started Delivery Hero, we started with 4 board seats for ourselves. We added 1 investor, he got 1 board seat, just to make sure to keep majority a long time, because we've seen so many screw-ups before. And Brands for Friends, you mentioned Brands for Friends. Nobody knows Brands for Friends. We sold it for $150 million or euros, which was a great deal back then, but like it could have been a $1 billion+ company. Why? Sorry, guys, sorry, folks, but poor investors.
All right. And how do you know if you to pick a good investor and advisor on that one for people that are now looking for finances?
No, do your homework. Yeah. I mean, one thing, always reference checks. Same when you hire people. When you hire people, reference checks. Yeah. Even when you hire young people, reference checks. Who are their friends? Talk with them. And same with investors, reference checks. And you also want reference checks, blind reference checks. Not only the 3 guys who he did provide you. You want to find challenging, tough situations, right? So, yeah, the problem is that many people don't have the luxury to pick their investor sometimes, right? So, yeah, go with your gut, so to say, when you feel great. Yeah.
Maybe no, it's about like time-wise, we're coming towards the end. We will definitely do a follow-on. I think there's so much more as well to learn about scaling as well and focusing on that. But for the ones that are at the very early stages, they might still be at the university or still have this job, and they're thinking about starting their own company. Any help for them to decide, should I now actually do it, or should I keep doing what I currently do and not actually wait?
I mean, like one great way of doing stuff is like interns. Do like 3 months interns, do a few of them, and try to do them with like great entrepreneurs who are relatively early, where you can be close to the entrepreneur himself or herself or maybe when there are companies that try to get like these perspectives, and at some point you have you have enough experience. So don't pay yourself for your for the experience that you need. Don't let your investors pay. Just join, observe, and learn first, and then at some point you sort of like feel ready. Yeah, I think like internships is the best MBA that you can have out there. It complements an MBA, so to say. Yeah? If you finish your MBA and you look for your first job, think twice. Maybe you rather it would be very unusual. I haven't seen anyone doing that, but like, why don't you take one more year and say like, okay, this year I have 4 times 3 months. I do 4 internships. Through the roof, your network will grow. You will see different perspectives, etc. So this would be one, and you also will get ideas, exposed to ideas when you select the fields according to the domains that are of interest to you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. I think really useful advice as well. Really the big picture, where the big focus areas, and maybe we have here and there a listener that says, okay, that's an area or watcher that says that's for me, I want to do it. Lukasz, thanks so much for taking your time and sharing these insights, and we're excited to see you moving forward, and all the best for that.
Yeah, thanks a lot again, and looking forward. Thanks, appreciate it.